we're grateful to welcome our first speaker up to the stage. And I believe that is Melinda. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I have on my schedule anyways.
Awesome. We're going to make you co-host, and that way you can share the screen as you like. But we're grateful to have Melinda Sims here with us, and privileged and honored to be here. Melinda, is there anything that you sometimes I like to ask a question. Is there anything maybe out a little bit outside the presentation or your bio that people may not know about you that's just kind of one of those things that just makes you you that you'd like to share with this audience?
Um, the one thing that comes to mind right away is I'm a heavy metal listener. So what you see on the surface is not necessarily what you're going to get.
I never would have guessed that, right? Each of us go to our own creative spaces, Melinda, and
That's right.
I love it.
That's right.
Okay, well, we're gonna roll with this. Take it away.
All right, let me share my screen here. Okay, so as you said, I'm Melinda Sims. I am the CFO of our family's Operation Sims Cattle Company in McFadden, Wyoming. We are a fifth generation operation with 4 generations still living on the place. We've managed holistically since 1989. And we do our best, like Jared said, just to improve every day, improve our animals, our people, our money situation, and our resources every day. And I wanted to start off this talk with, why is ranching or farming for the next generation important? There's a lot of people that are first generational farmers and they're very successful. And I don't want to take that away from them. But I do think that by not making our operations generational, we're crippling people coming into that are going to manage our places, whether they are brand new owners or further on down the line. I like to start off with some definitions. I really like words and I like what their meanings are, and it makes me feel like I'm staying on track with what the true meaning of something is. So let's look at regenerate. So it's to improve a place or system, especially by making it more active or successful, or to improve a place or system so that it is active or producing good results again. So again, just generally improving the place. The next definition I want to look at is generation. So that's what we're talking about, is passing these on, making a legacy. So a body of living beings constituting a single step in the line of descent from an ancestor, or a single step in natural descent. I like that, natural descent. It's not by overtaking or overthrowing, as human beings, animals, or plants. And finally, this definition, wisdom, the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. So why exactly do we need generational operations? Why is it important for all types of agriculture to keep these generational? Well, if we look at early man or indigenous cultures, they were able to pass on their land management, their animal management, and their people management tactics for countless generations. It was orally or by stories on the wall or later on in written terms. And they pass those on to each new generation. Think about the skill of learning to build a fire. They learned that skill, but they didn't make the next generation learn it all over again. They taught them how to do it so that the next generation could focus on maybe how to cook meat and so on and so forth. And that's exactly how agriculture came to be. The old generations were able to pass on the new generations the information that they had learned, building upon their knowledge with each generation, if you will, compounding their knowledge, kind of like compounding interest. This allows the next generations to focus their time and energy on new problems or making life better in different ways. The new generation didn't have to start at square one. And so that brings us to the agriculture that we have today. But are we crippling ourselves? A lot of these places are not generational now. They're being lost. They're being sold. They're being, taken over by people who are not native to that area. And so they also don't have guidance of elders leading them to what are some of the best practices that they found on that place. So are we able to continuously improve, or are we starting at square one all of the time? And I really appreciate this quote. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So how do we regenerate our businesses so that keeping our operations generational is even an option at all? And the first thing that we have to do is look at the whole. And I like this definition. It's so very simple. While our whole is so complex, the definition of it is very easy. Not in pieces. It's a single object, thinking about everything as one. When we're talking about our businesses, there are 4 parts to this whole that we have to consider. We have to consider our land, our production, our money, and our people. And we have to consider these things equally. We can't get them out of balance. A lot of you may or may not know, I'm also a ranching for profit instructor. And so I use a lot of materials from that school. And so you may have seen Stan Parsons' illustration of the African cooking pot with the 3 legs when he's talking about the whole. And we have adapted that in the newer schools as well. But it's actually really hard to find a picture of a cooking pot online. They usually come up as witches' cauldrons. So I use the illustration of a stool because it serves the same purpose. So if we're looking at our business as this stool, there are 3 legs to it, and then it supports something. So the 3 legs are represented by our land or our resource base, our production, our animals, our crops, whatever it is that is making us money, our money itself, or our finances. And finally, all 3 of these things together go to support our people. If we get one of these legs out of balance, for example, if we are not taking care of our resource base or our land, that leg becomes shorter. And we can prop it up for a little time. Maybe I can stick my toe underneath that leg and prop up that stool, but it's not sustainable. And then if I can no longer prop it up, I fall off the stool. The business is no longer taking care of me. And that's not the point of the business. The business is to take care of our people. So how do we keep this in balance? Now, with this being a regenerative summit, most people are quite versed in keeping the leg of their land functioning very well. It's holding up its own. The soil health movement has really made great leaps and bounds for helping people keep their land or their resource base healthy. In general, we don't see a lot of ranches that are really lacking on the production side either. People generally know how to grow good animals, and they generally know how to grow good crops. But especially in the ranching for profit schools, where we see people lacking is in their money management and in the supporting of their people. This money management or one of these other legs is shorter than the other, and the people are tipping over. So what does it look like when the people aren't supported by our business? And what does it look like when our money is out of balance? And those are the 2 areas I want to focus on, because like I said, most people have a grasp on their land and production. And you're going to hear from a lot of other speakers later today that really are much more versed in land and production than I am. So when our money is neglected, we see things like poor gross margins. We see overspending on a project that actually hurts our bottom line and is not profitable. Even though it may be really, really good for the land, we can't afford it. We see unsustainable practices that the next generation can't financially support. And we see a big lack of wealth management. Once people are profitable, they don't know what to do with their money. And going into the next generation, it's really important to, number one, be profitable. And number two, be able to manage that wealth once you are profitable. Now, what does it look like when our people are not supported correctly? We tend to see people who don't have a separation between their business and their life. Their life is their business. They can't get away because they have so much going on the land or with their production that they just, that is their identity. Their operation is their identity. We see a lot of the newer generations not wanting to be a part of that family business because it's been so darn hard on mom and dad or whoever it is ahead of them that they don't want any part of that. Why would kids want to come back to a place where mom and dad are working themselves to death? We see people not have an identity beyond what is just their everyday lives. And we see a lot of burnout and people ending up quitting and breaking that generational passage of land and knowledge onto their children or whoever is next in the succession. And then finally, we see a lot of people that are very worried because they have no clarity on what is coming down the line for them. So let's talk about money first. What can we do with our money that can help us be successful in passing these operations on to the next generation? And I want to be clear, the next generation does not have to be blood, but it does need to be somebody that is willing to be mentored. Plus, the old generation needs to be willing to mentor them and spend the time and pass this knowledge down onto them. So with money, the first thing we need to consider are economics. Our economics define whether we can or should have specific enterprises on our places. Are these enterprises actually contributing a decent gross margin and creating profit? We can use enterprise or economics to look specifically at enterprises, and we can also look at it for projecting into the future what our business is going to do. And we see a lot of people that just don't know if an enterprise is actually making money. And a big problem that we see is finance. People are not very well versed in finance. Where does the money come from for specific enterprises or other expenses? And how does the cash flow and how and when do I repay debt? There's a lot of operations that are severely in debt and continuing to throw good money after bad without understanding what it's doing. If you continue to grow debt, the next generation can't and doesn't want your operation. And then finally, when I become profitable, how do I manage the wealth that I've built? These are all questions that need to be answered in order to have a generational operation. This is another definition that I like to have out there, and it's profit. It's the proceeds or revenue as from property or investments, the monetary surplus left to a producer or employer after deducting wages, rent, and cost of raw materials. This is very close to the exact definition that we would use in a ranching for profit school. We have to be paying people's wages, the rent of our land, the fair market value, and all of our other costs in order to consider the money left over as a profit. Now, the people side, let's focus on that for a little bit. What does it look like when people are actually being supported by the business? They are allowed to have autonomy. They are allowed to make decisions for themselves and have thoughts of their own. That's the old generation and the new generation, both. It's a necessary thing for people to be wanted on a place, to feel wanted, to feel like they're actually contributing. People need mastery. They need to feel like they are becoming experts in their area. They want to be able to feel like someone could come to them for advice. And people need purpose. They need to know that what they're doing is actually going towards something bigger than themselves. People need security. A lot of times with ranching operations, that ends up being financial security. A lot of places are not paying fair wages, or they are relying on sweat equity to pay their labor. And people actually need money. They need enough money so that money's not a worry. They don't need money so that they just feel wealthy, but they do need money so that they're not worried about it. Then they can focus on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And finally, we need clarity, especially the new generation coming in. They need clarity from the old generation of knowing what is going to happen to the place. What is their role in the future of it? Once we have these areas filled with our people, then we can go on to this next definition, fulfilling, because that's what we're giving our people, is a fulfilling life. It's satisfying or rewarding, especially by meeting the emotional need for meaning, challenge, growth, and success. So I've given you these 5 main words: regenerate, generation, wisdom, whole, profit, fulfilling. These are all words that are applicable to all of us, and they're all words that we need to know the meaning of if we're going to be able to pass these farms and ranches on through the next generation and have a legacy and have that generational knowledge. So as you go on further into this summit and you listen to the other speakers, I want you to keep these 6 words in mind. And like I said, I'm kind of a nut for definitions. And so maybe we can come up with a new definition, or almost a new word, because this word was not in the dictionary that I found. And that's regeneration. A body of living beings descending from an ancestor that is profitably improving a place or system with experience, knowledge, and good judgment as a single, undivided object, all while discovering meaning, challenge, growth, and success. How can we do that for ourselves? Because if we can do all of those things in that definition of regeneration, then we will be able to pass on and actually have a legacy and carry on that generational knowledge and be able to make advancements in agriculture without becoming stagnant. And I want to leave you with this last quote. The most dangerous thing in ranching is to do things the way Grandpa did them. The second most dangerous thing in ranching is to forget why Grandpa did things the way he did them. We can break paradigms and we can do things in a new way that leads us more towards our goals. But it's really dangerous to forget why the generations before us did the things that they did. They have a lot of knowledge base that we need in order to keep these ranches moving on to the next generation. If you'd like to get a hold of me, here is my information, melinda@simscattlecompany.com, and we do have a website. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and by all means, if you want more information on ranching for profit, please visit ranchmanagement.com. And I've left quite a bit of time for some questions, so if anybody has any, I would love to hear them.
Perfect, Melinda. Thank you so much. Way to be so concise and just pack in some great information and principles there. As you've taught the schools, the Ranching for Profit schools, what would you say on the maybe on what we might label negative and positive? On the businesses that are struggling, are there any commonalities? And then on the businesses that are successful, are there any commonalities that you might share?
Yeah, so one thing I didn't mention, the businesses that are struggling don't have clarity for what's going on for the next generation. That is one of the biggest things. And Alan Crockett always talked about every problem is a people problem. And so if you get the people part of it right, that leads you to be a successful business. And there's some tools that we have that can help with those people problems to create clarity. Things like organizational charts and position agreements, management succession plans. That is a big one that most operations don't have. Not necessarily how is the asset going to be passed on to the next generation, but how is it going to be managed? Who's going to manage it? And when is it going to change hands? Are we waiting until grandpa's 95 to pass that on to his son who's in his 70s? Or are we going to do that and pass it on to somebody who's in their management prime, say in their 40s and 50s? So some of those tools are ones that we see if ranches are using them, they become much more successful at passing these on to the next generation. The second part of that is the money part, because like I said, people have a pretty good grasp on land and animals or production, but if they can get their place profitable, they're going to be successful, because what kid wants to take on somebody's debt? What kid wants to take on, something that there's no prospect of actually, putting away money and being financially secure? So I think profitability is another huge one for those that are successful.
Perfect. Yeah. Amen to that in our experience as well, both personal and with clients. Somebody asked the question in the chat, what's the newest regenerative system you've implemented on your ranch? How does it fit into the framework of being financially sustainable? If you need further clarification, Maggie could come off mute. She asked that.
Okay, well, one of the newest things that we've done is really focusing on our animals being adapted to our environment specifically. So the newest thing that we have done is completely close our herd, and we we raise all of our own bulls and heifers, and nothing leaves our place. It's within our holistic goal to have adapted animals, and that's one of the ways that we have found to do that. Living at 7,200 feet in a cold desert, it's a hard environment to bring animals into. And that has definitely made us a lot more profitable. We're no longer spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on genetics. We're raising them ourselves, and we're actually able to raise both bulls and heifers very, very inexpensively in our environment.
Nice. And how long have you been doing that?
The heifer part of it, which is weaning heifers at 10 months, leaving them on the cow and keeping them here, we've been doing for 10 years. And we have completely had a closed herd for going on our 5th year, I believe, 4th or 5th year.
Nice. That's cool. Who, I always like to ask this question, who have been your mentors, Melinda, in your regenerative journey?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Burke Tykert. His knowledge base is absolutely phenomenal, and we're lucky enough that we're along his trekking route whenever he's traveling the US, and he stops by and says hi. And so we get to talk to Burke a lot and have a lot of input from him on our management practices. And he's the one who first told us, in order to love cows, I have to love grass. And in order to love grass, I have to love soil. And that has really stuck with us and just made it, very clear what our focus should be on. We have to start at the very base, which is at our soil.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe one last question. What, a lot of us are here because we are soil nerds and we love that. What are some of the things that you've done to be able to improve your soil, and what are the results from that?
Yeah, so back in 1989, when I said that we became, holistic managers, my father-in-law and his brother went to a savory school, and they came home and immediately started dividing up our pastures. And we're on 26,000 acres, and we currently have 144 permanent pastures with the ability to split those down, even further to triple our pastures. That has let us, more intensively graze, and change in our area is very, very slow, but we have seen an increase in our carrying capacity. It's taken, a few decades in a cold desert. It doesn't happen annually. But we now we're able to rest about a third of our uplands every year and hold that in reserve either for land health and just building organic matter, or in a drought situation, we have those reserves to be able to go ahead and graze and, not have to sell our factory when everybody else is also liquidating.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's good. And then, follow-up question, are you using any synthetic inputs either on the land or the livestock side?
Um, on the land, we definitely have quit fertilizing. That was a big jump of faith, and we are liking what we see with that. Lots more diversity in our grasses. With the animals, we do still vaccinate. And I would say that's basically about the only synthetic thing that is being brought in is vaccinations for cows.
Yeah, no wormers or insecticides or things like that.
Actually, we do delouse. Yes, we do
Yeah.
delouse because in the cold environment, bald cows is kind of an issue. We
Sure.
do only delouse cattle that are raising a calf through the winter, so only half of them,
Okay.
and they're not going to get, deloused every year because they may have a steer calf that gets weaned and then they're not going to get treated.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, very good. That's been awesome, Melinda. Thank you so much for being a part of this summit. We appreciate your expertise. And again, Margot just put in the chat the way to be able to connect with you. And you're probably going to hear a lot about the Ranching for Profit School from different speakers. If you haven't been, like Wally Olson said, maybe you need to put that on your to-do list at the back of your journal. Sign up for the next available Ranching for Profit School. We love what they do, and they've been a great supporter in the regenerative movement, because it's really being regenerative on the land. If we can't sustain it economically, then it's truly not regenerative. It's you've got to be profitable to be regenerative, right? So
Absolutely.
any final thought, Melinda, before we switch to our next speaker?
Well, just thank you so much for considering me as a speaker for this. I'm really honored. And I do know that there are open spots available at our Kennewick Ranching for Profit School in September, of which I will be one of the instructors. So hope to
Oh,
see some of you there.
perfect. Yeah, well, thank you again, Melinda. We appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you.